Good evening, everyone. This is Planning Commission of the City of
Recording in
Columbus.
progress.
Excuse me. This is a Planning Commission meeting for February 1st, 2023 for the City of Columbus, and the time is 6 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting to order, and the first thing on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we start, we'll wait till Bethany gets up.
Oh, all right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The third item on the agenda is the introduction of our new planning commissioner, Lynn Carver Quinn, which will be over to the left, too. So, welcome aboard, Lynn. I'd give you your dossier and your whole resume, but I didn't do it for Bethany last week. I just kind of shot through it a couple weeks ago. But it's nice having a full crowd here now, isn't it, Barb?
Yep, it sure is.
It's great. Maybe before, maybe we can talk about this later, but
Okay.
about the council coming in.
Sure.
In case, should we do it now, or should we?
We can talk about it now.
Okay.
We can talk about it now.
Well, we had a council meeting, and what's going to happen is there's going to be a council member here as a liaison, and they'll come, and we'll do it in 3 quarters. So I'll be done in March, and then a new council member will come in April, May, and June, and then another one, and this will go on throughout the year. So while we're adding that to it, if I'm correct, so you got till the end of March to find a new chairman. So so the 4 of you are going to have to kick it around and think about that sometime. And then I'll be gone, and I don't know who comes up next, Janet? Oh, we haven't? Well, there's supposed to be people coming. But there'll be one thing positive about it, too, and maybe Barb, you know how we used to, for the other people that are new on the board here, the commission, we used to always have to come in and review what we did the week before. Well, now the council member will do it, so we don't have to do that anymore, which I think is nice, you know, not putting any more burden on the planning commission. So let's go on to item number 4, which is a motion approval of tonight's meeting agenda.
This is Barb, so moved.
Anybody want to second that? You want to pull your mics down, everybody? Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Frank seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. We'll start with Frank.
Aye. Frank?
Aye. Bethany?
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye. Lynn, aye.
Go on item number 5, motion approval of January 18th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Make a motion to approve it.
This is Barb, I'll second it.
We'll take a vote since Lynn wasn't, Lynn? You can
No,
abstain.
since I wasn't here, I'm not going to vote.
You can say abstain then.
Barb, aye.
Ron, aye.
Bethany, aye.
Frank, aye.
Right. Item number 6 on the agenda tonight is a motion approval of January 18th, 2023, 5551 Pine Street Northeast Kennel, interim use permit, Edward Lauterbach, public hearing minutes. Anybody?
This is Barb, so moved.
Bethany, I second.
That's great.
Is that a good way to say it?
That's a good way to do
Okay.
it. Any discussion? Not hearing none. We'll start with Frank.
Frank, aye.
Bethany, aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Lynn abstained because I wasn't here.
Yep, that's pretty good.
Okay.
Or you can say I'm not voting on it. Item number 7 on the agenda is review commercial pet/small animal uses study, pages 1 through 29, and enclosures, page E1, E12. So we'll hand over the floor to Frank.
All right, everyone. So tonight we're going to go through, I'm going to present a review on our commercial pet and small animal uses study. The reason I wanted to do this review is I know we've got 3 members that have joined us since our last meeting, and I thought it'd be a good idea just to get everyone caught up, know where we're at right now. So tonight you'll see that there are some study questions in there. This meeting, we won't be actually answering these study questions, and I'll get a little bit more into that in a little bit, but that's going to be something that we'll do the next meeting. And I will, a little bit later on, take some concerns or comments that if anyone has it pop up right away, but we can also, I'm also willing to take any emails or calls in the next week, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, so just to start, just to explain to what is a moratorium or moratoria, these are used by cities to allow time for proper ordinances to be put into place. They're temporary in nature, and they may only be adopted under certain conditions. In our case, a study was authorized to study commercial pets, small animal uses, and during the time of the study, what basically happens in this case is there's a pause. So we don't take in new applications, we don't approve any permits of things that weren't in before the moratorium was adopted. To be clear, though, this does not affect either existing applications that would have already come in or businesses that already exist. So any business that's already doing like animal daycare, animal grooming commercially, they're not affected by this. They're still allowed to operate. And in our case, for this study, once a new ordinance is adopted on the study subject, the moratorium will end. And if you could go to the next slide. Oh, no, actually that's the perfect slide. So in our case, the moratorium was adopted by the city in December of 2021. The ordinance established a moratorium on small animal uses, so small animal indoor boarding, daycare, small animal grooming. Additionally, small animal training was requested to be added to the study by the city council. And there was also a resolution at the same time to authorize the study that we started in November and that will be continuing next week. And the study is to be conducted for the same businesses listed, the training and ancillary vet care. So as far as why we're doing a moratorium, in the summer of 2021, there was a conditional use application for a doggy daycare business, which would fall under the small animal daycare use. And because there's no state licensing requirements, the city council ended up having to do quite a bit of work to ensure that there was adequate conditions put into place before approving the permit to make sure that everything was looked at, because it just simply lacked licensing from the state. It was something that is for local municipalities to do on their own. And after this, after the summer of 2021, and that business was approved by the city council, there was an inquiry for an unrelated dog training business, something that wasn't with the doggy daycare thing. There was a question about that in the fall of 2021. And the Planning Commission didn't feel that it was a fit for the Highway Commercial District, which is where the application was for. And the reason that a moratorium was adopted was in December of 2021, the city was in the midst of its zoning ordinance revision because the comprehensive plan had been adopted not too long before that, and there needed to be a revision of the zoning ordinance, so there was about 87 pages of zoning code redone, and that was just about complete about the time that this inquiry came in. And that would have affected things. So that's why there was this pause on small animal uses, specifically boarding, training, grooming, and so because of the time needed, it was decided to do the moratorium and call for the study that we are working on tonight. Now, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and review the questions that we had at the November meeting where we began the discussion. And this would have been November 10th. And at that meeting, I want to make clear, we didn't answer the questions. That's going to be coming up at this not this meeting, but the next meeting that we'll be doing with the city council. And at that meeting, at the November 11th meeting, or November 10th meeting, the previous one, we went over these questions, and what I had asked was the 3 questions you'll see at the bottom there. Do the Planning Commission and City Council believe these were the primary policy questions? Are there additional central policy questions? And should any of these policy questions be removed? Now, as you'll see here, the first bit of feedback that I got was I was being a little bit too narrow with boarding and grooming, which is why now it's commercial, pet, and small animal facilities or uses. And if we go to the next slide, I'll go through a little bit more feedback that I received. There was some feedback about focusing the questions a little bit more specifically 2 and 3, making the focus of question 2 on permitting and making the focus on question 3 on uses. And I did a little bit of a revision here, and ultimately we'll be reviewing these with the city council at the next meeting, but I just kind of wanted to put it up there just to have that on the table, just to give everyone a little bit of extra time, because I know we got new people to this. So at the, but yeah, I just wanted to do it at the next meeting just so everyone's present. But for the time being, it's up there if everyone just wants to think about it for the next couple weeks, and then that way we'll be all ready for the discussion on the 15th. And then, so the next slide, perfect. So in addition to asking about those questions, I also did ask for questions of the City Council and Planning Commission. So the first question I asked was, are there any specific commercial zoning districts where you believe these facilities should be prohibited? And the feedback I got was, before we kind of get into that, I need to start defining the individual uses and then work with the council and planning commission on that. Daycare, pet grooming, pet training, those things need to be sorted out before everyone starts making zoning decisions on that. So in addition to that, I should also be considering different scenarios, and that's something that the planning commission and council will have to decide on. Specifically, one thing brought up was principal use versus accessory use. I know drive-up scenario was also something mentioned. So for the next meeting, what I'm going to be doing is creating definitions for individual facility types and doing some land use recommendations. And go to the next slide. Sorry, I need a little sip of water here. Much better. So for the second question I asked, were there any specific nuisance concerns, like sights, sounds, odors, that the Planning Commission and City Council have for these types of businesses? And this is going to be more of a question that's going to be related to how we design conditional use permits. And the feedback I got at the last meeting was sights, sounds, and smells are all big concerns. Hunting dog training is another one. Some potential problems brought up were barking, gunshots, and pet facilities that were using repurposed buildings. I think one thing brought up was issues with soundproofing. So these are some things that we'll be working on as we design this, these new ordinances. And if you want to go to the next slide, what type of design standards are the top concerns of the Planning Commission and City Council? And at that time, the couple things that got brought up were ventilation, and that's going to fall more under the permitting and licensing sort of category of how we're going to design this. And then I also heard impervious surfaces, and that was, I know, an issue that came up at the time of the small animal daycare facility that was improved in the summer of 2021. And that's going to be more under the conditional use permit. So this will be a good little variety pack to start your time on the Columbus Planning Commission. And then for the fourth question, what controls do the Planning Commission and City Council believe are lacking in the existing pet boarding and grooming regulation and uses? The nuisances priorities were reiterated: sound, sight, smells. Concerns, and now I'll kind of go a little bit more into why I don't want too much done tonight, is because there was some concern that maybe policy-wise, the Planning Commission might get ahead with recommendations and it might not be aligned with City Council policy. This wasn't something because there's new members or anything. This was decided back in November before anyone new came aboard. So it was decided then that we would do joint meetings going forward. The only reason I didn't do one tonight is I just wanted to kind of catch everybody up that wasn't here at previous meetings on what we had done so far. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot right now, because I know I said tonight wouldn't be too much heavy lifting, and no one has to come up with anything immediately. But I do want the new Planning Commission members to be able to also have any sort of say before the next meeting on these 4 questions that we just went through, because I know that we'll be coming back and we'll already be partway through it. So again, I'm kind of just throwing it out here right now. So if anyone has anything in the next week that they think of, or if anyone has anything right away, tonight you can feel free to say anything right now. Otherwise, I'll take any emails or calls in the next week, and I'll try and integrate that into our next meeting. But yeah, I'll take a quick pause right now. If there's any additional concerns that anyone kind of had pop into their head, but.
Anybody? Lynn?
Okay, so I'm just going to put out there that when I went through the packet, I mean, it was very well detailed. Janet, you were great. But I just went a step farther because I don't know if any of you are familiar with Katie K9 in Hugo. and we took our dog there for training. I also know the gal that runs Sit Means Sit, and she moved from Stacy to North Branch. And then I just Googled, and there is a Camp K9 in Forest Lake. So just to kind of see what our neighbors are doing, all three places are zoned agricultural, so they're not in the commercial district. And Hugo has what they call an accessory use permit that has performance conditions attached to it. So if we just kind of take the philosophy of what's already out there, so we're not creating something new, and hunting training, really, I mean, that's something, according to Katie K9, you shouldn't take your dog and drop it off to be trained. You want it to be trained to yield to you. So when you're talking hunting training, that needs at least 20 acres. So I don't see that a viable spot for us. So
Why did they figure it was needed 20 acres?
Katie K9 has 20 acres, as well as the one in Forest Lake. It is on a 202nd Street North. So I'm just putting that out there because I think that I want my pet to go to a nice, clean place. And let's just be honest, people that own pets are willing to pay for them more so than they are on themselves. And so that's my take. I want to see us really be thoughtful with it. I don't think it belongs in a commercial zone. I think it should be, agricultural with the land and the training. And I would like us to get some of these big names instead of just somebody trying to do it out of their house.
Thank you, Lynn. Frank, you have anything? Bethany?
The only other thing that even popped into my head, and I don't know if this is applicable because this is all obviously new and I am sort of figuring it out as I go here, but just even from like the safety of the animals perspective, like if animals get out of a facility or whatever, like where are they? I don't know if that, if they're by, and I don't know where the specific proposed thing was supposed to be. I don't know if I missed that in here where they were asking for it to be, but just like dropping your animals off, and if they're like at my groomer that I went to this morning, there's a little lobby and your dog is just kind of there and then he can get out and there's tons of traffic in the parking lot and whatever. So I don't know how that would apply or if it does, but it's the only thing that came to mind.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good concern that we can work, because you're saying if an animal gets out, kind of what would happen, or kind of what we have in place for that, or what we should have?
Maybe what should, if there should be verbiage around that, but also just like the location of something. If you have a bunch of animals coming in and out all the time, for the safety of the animals as much as for nuisance of people in the area, I guess. From the animal perspective, like, is this a good spot for an animal to be, I guess?
Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
This is Elizabeth Morsko, City Administrator. Just for some clarification, Columbus does not have agricultural zoning. All of our zoning is either residential or commercial. Even our land use plan doesn't contemplate agricultural. It doesn't mean that we don't have agricultural uses. We do. People still farm, people still have animals, horses, those sorts of things. But that's more on a use basis, meaning they use the property that way, but it's not zoned that way. And just for clarification, we have land use, that's what Met Council regulates, that's on the comp plan, and then we have zoning districts. So underlying the zoning districts, we have land use, so when we talk about, some of the names are interchangeable, but the comprehensive plan is a little bit broader based, where they just have specific, whether it's commercial or multi-family housing or designations of those uses, whereas zoning districts are specific to industrial or commercial or retail or those sorts of things. So in this particular case, what I'm hearing everyone say here is, and the moratorium was for, I would say, more the commercial districts, but what I'm also hearing is that we do have a residential zone business segment in our code, which allows people to have residential zone businesses. And you will have time to time someone who wants a grooming business. Bethany, as you indicated, there was at least one that we've had as a residential zone business. So I think that might be another policy question, whether or not we want to see these types of uses as a residential zone business. There you will have larger acre lots. You will have 20-acre lots. You will have those larger ones, even though we have 5-acre zoning. So we might want to add that as to whether we think that is a potential residential zone business. We still have we're still going to go and have ongoing discussions about residential zone businesses. That will be coming because we had a moratorium on that also that has run out, but we will still continue to work on that, except we will work at it as a joint meeting, just as Frank said earlier. When we have joint meetings, what that means is just that. It's a joint meeting between the city council and planning commission members. We all sit in a big circle and we have a rather large discussion. So it is all, in this point, it will be 9 of you. And it is a round circle discussion where everyone gets to participate, everyone gets to vote at those meetings. So they are beneficial for everyone because you can have one common discussion. So at the next meeting, we will, I won't say a two-tier, but we'll probably have 2 different discussions, one on residential zone business and perhaps one on, what do you call it, small pet study, small pet. Commercial.
Pet and small animal
mouthful.
uses. We're still getting used to it.
So just for further explanation, so we'll certainly add that policy issue. Other questions?
Barb, do you have anything?
I just happened to think when I was reading over, like you say, Janet's detailed conditions and everything, for commercial boarding and grooming and stuff, since it is a business, is there any chance that they could be required to have the dogs chipped, so that if something does happen that they get out or whatever, somebody knows who they belong to? Is that something that the council can decide, or?
You want to take it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I know for the Muddy Paws, or the previous doggy daycare conditional use permit, that was something that was in there. I think if that's something that we could potentially bring into the ordinance, we can definitely have that as part of the discussion. Sorry, Elizabeth, was I?
So I think when we're looking at overall, you have licensure and then you have a conditional use permit or interim use permit. One is about land use. And when we talk about land use, that's on the outside of the building. Generally, licensure is inside the building. So the one most people are familiar with is liquor license. The city issues liquor licenses. It's for activity inside the building. You know what I mean? And the other one most people are familiar with is tobacco. You know what I mean? We license individual places to sell tobacco. So you have to think of this licensing for these daycare facilities. Because the state doesn't license them, the state says it's up to the local jurisdiction to license them if you allow that use in a zoning district. If you didn't have the use in the zoning district, there would be no need for the licensure. So as part of licensure, it's up to the city as to what you want to adopt. And I think during the Muddy Paws, Councilmember Hagelin tried to institute those types of licensure issues because they weren't in the code. Mm-hmm. So they were addressed, you know what I mean, and we went through them, and it was setting us up for having that format in our code in Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is what we call municipal code, meaning it's part of our government ordinances, not in the zoning code. The zoning code would be, are we going to allow the use in the district? And if the answer is yes, then you say, okay, you need a conditional use permit, but then you also need a license to operate because, I don't know, we want you to have certain shots if they're over 6 months. We want you to have certain types of space for each one and crates and all of those things that we talked about. And those are the things that you would look at as licensure and decide whether you want those type of criteria. I don't remember chipping as being one of them. I do know that if you have a dangerous dog, we require it. And that's only for a potentially dangerous dog. We require them to be chipped. And that's the only place that I'm familiar that we actually require chipping. But again, it's something you can talk about. I don't know that everyone does it to their pet. My pets are chipped. But I don't know if everyone does that.
Well, thank you. I've just got a quick question. Nandules, did they train dogs out there? I know I took my dog out there about 20 years ago.
Yes, they did training, but their permit was a kennel license, and their kennel license allowed them to do dog boarding, and their license covered 22 dogs because they had 22 runs. And at the time, before we had interim use permits, kennel licenses were given out each year, and there was a criteria for licensing. And each year they came in, if they met all the criteria for licensing, they got a permit to operate. So that was just a little bit different. I don't know that, because again, that license is quite old. I don't know if they were ever licensed for training, but I do know that they did it, but I don't know that they were, there was such a thing because they never had a residential zone business. They never had those types of permits.
I just, listening to Lynn down there talking about all these places around, I've been to most of them, you know, the K9 and Total Recall, all them, because I've got dogs, but never really looked at all their licenses and had no, well, Janet has. Yes, sure. Sure.
This will determine how we move forward, but when I looked at the stuff he put together, it looks like this moratorium has expired. It says the resolution expired at the end of December, so we don't have to follow the questions and all of that kind of stuff. And I think the policy question that came up at the meeting, whenever it was, November, had to do with whether the city was adequately staffed to do the licensing part. And to talk about anything else before we answer that question, because if the answer to that is no, then we don't go any further. So I'm just bringing that up in terms of the meeting that's coming up. I think that that's the number one question. And since we're not in a moratorium anymore, we don't have to answer all the questions that you posed, but unless I'm misunderstanding.
Yeah, the moratorium, the publication date was after it was adopted, and so there's a few more months. Yes, you talked about it in December, but it wasn't adopted, or I mean, it wasn't published for some time, and so there's a little latitude in the expiration dates. But I agree with you, if you think the study of what you already looked at is complete, just as we did the CI district, you know what I mean, you can complete the moratorium, and you can end the moratorium saying, you've studied it, here's your study, here's our conclusion, and we're done, type of thing. So you can certainly do that. For the residential zone business, we understood that it was expiring December 6th, and that we would continue because we said we were going to do a study, and that we were going to, we understood it was expired, and we were going to continue. So I agree. I mean, it's just a matter of when the dates are, you know what I mean, looked at. So overall. But I think it says upon publication, unless that was not included, and if that's, and if that's the case, then it's expired.
Well, there we are.
Yeah, so,
Expired?
It's expired, so but is this something that the council can take up next week?
So
Talk about it?
I'm looking at so the resolution to order a study was effective as of December 29th of '21. The ordinance to start a moratorium says it was adopted on December 29th and shall become effective after its publication. And I think it was published in like June or July, I think.
Yeah, it was quite some months ahead. So that's the difference there.
But in the ordinance 21-21 it says the moratorium shall expire without further action of the council 1 year from its
There you go.
are you saying ordinance 2111, the one that's actually establishing? Okay, so if you flip to page 6, at the top, there's section 3 effective date, and at the very last part of the sentence is, and shall become effective after its publication.
So it is 1 year from the effective date, but the effective date is when it's published, which was like June or something.
It doesn't really matter, though. The council has the ability to end it. And if the council wants to end it at the next meeting, we can certainly do that. Because you've made a decision, and that decision could be, you know what I mean, just like we did the CI. You know, six months in, you made a decision, adopted the ordinance, and we're all done. We can do the same exact thing, and it's effectively the same thing. The one thing I will tell you is, we have to have a study. You're required, whether you let it end or not, you're still required to do the study, because that was the reason why we had the moratorium. So you do have to complete the study. It doesn't mean that if you conclude that you've talked about it enough and you've concluded that it's not what you want to do, that's good enough, as long as you have that in writing and you're not going to change the ordinance to add it, then that's good. I mean, that was the whole point, to study it and move on. So again, we can get to the same conclusion either way. So
So we could put this off till our joint meeting, a couple of weeks?
yes,
Yeah, so we have a discussion, and if we come to a conclusion that our study's over, we can end it right there. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, this slide just changed a little bit. So I think, well, I know then our first point of discussion is going to be whether to continue on with the study, or if the city council decides to move into another direction, we'll do that. In the meantime, should we decide to move forward, I've already got the revised policy questions. I've already started on the definition of uses. We can then go forward with some discussion, and it sounds like if we do keep this moving, RZB is going to be a part of that, but I want to make sure that before we do too much into that, we'll bring the city council in with that. And yeah, I guess now if there are any final questions, I can answer any of those.
Any questions?
I have none.
We have none, I guess.
All right, well, In that case, Mr. Chair, I will throw it back to you.
Thank you very much, Frank. We'll go on to item number 8 on the agenda tonight is the public open forum. Is there anybody out there? We'll take anybody inside the building that'd like to get up, say something. Seeing no mad rush coming up, we'll go to the Zoom. Anybody out there in Zoom land, or is there anybody on tonight?
One person.
Okay. Anybody out there like to have the floor? What, we got one in the office here, in the building. The mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Sorry I'm late. So for all you new guys and ladies, 1, 2, 3. I know this is complicated. It is for me. I've been hanging around here too long, and there's so many moving parts. So just take everything in stride. Ask Frank, ask Elizabeth, ask any of us, anything you want, or Ron or Barb, because this is all so different than what we all understand. So thank you for your time. Thank you for thinking about it, and just go with the flow, because there's so much to everything. You just have to learn it. After 5 or 10 years, you'll just be, no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Nobody else out there coming forth? We'll go to the Planning Commissioner's report. Barb, you have anything?
I have nothing.
Lynn?
Nope.
Bethany?
Nope.
Frank? And Ron, I have nothing else. We'll go to Frank, Associate Planner's report.
Yeah, I know at the, thank you, Mr. Chair, sorry. I know at the last meeting, there was a question about some of the billboards going southbound on Interstate 35W right after the split. I talked to the applicant for those billboards, and they happen to be up in the area today, and I kind of expressed to them what some of the issues were raised last time, the ladder being up front, the coloring not matching what it was supposed to be, and I kind of talked about the conditions that we had, let them know what was presented, and I know today when I talked to them and they were in the area, they said that when they were heading back into town, they were going to be taking a look at them. So right now, I'm going to keep working with them to make sure that these conditions will be met. But I just want to make sure that the Plan Commission knows I have been in communication with them. So
Thanks, Frank. I do have a question.
sure.
Was I correct? Was the color off on the sign?
The color was,
It was
by the
gold.
conditions, are supposed to be the same as the Columbus Bridge, which is Minnesota 97, Scandia Trail, Lake Drive, whatever you want to call it at that point. Those two are supposed to match both in color and font. So it looked different to me, certainly. I was going down the highway, but I think a couple of us I've pulled in some non-planning people from the office staff, and I don't think any of us thought that it matched the bridge. So yeah, we'll be working with the applicant on that one. So
Well, thank you.
yeah.
Didn't know if I was going colorblind or what. Or if you could see through the ladder, whatever.
Oh, and I'm sorry, one more thing. I'm actually going to have Ella give a little report on a couple of things I think she wanted to take care of.
Yes, so with the handouts that y'all got today, I think everybody's is a little bit different, but you would have gotten a paper-clipped couple of pages labeled the Planning Commissioner Handbook. So the intention there is that you will take out the old version and put in the new version on those blue Planning Commissioner handbooks. So make sure you update the title page so that I know and that you know that yours is up to date as of what date. So I think the only changes are we updated zoning map, and then some parliamentary procedures, and then, yes, the contact list. So, yeah, just letting you all know that that's what that's for, is for you to replace it in your handbooks.
That's it?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm actually going to do just a tiny addendum to that. Just as, so everyone is aware, I know the CI Light District was recently put into place. I'm working with Bolton and Menk, our engineering company or engineering consultant, on making a finalized version of the map. It's just going to be, it's going to be essentially the same thing, just with the colors being different. But just so you all know, there's going to be a new one of those coming down the pipe, but it's the same uses, same places. So just wanted to let everyone know.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah.
I want to say something real quick, Beth. You got your paperwork? Or I dropped it off?
Oh, yeah.
You probably wondered where it came from.
It was like magic. I just accepted it.
Well, we're talking about the packets. I
Yeah.
happened to pick hers up inside because it was locked inside, and I figured I was here on Saturday, and I had mine, and I think Janet, you pick up one or two, Janet? Okay, so if there's an issue there,
So you brought it to my house?
right,
Magic.
I know, well,
Wow.
I knew where.
Thank you.
It had an address on it.
It makes
But
sense.
it was on the way when I was going home. But I was just going to say that if we're going to have that, if I see it, I usually come in, pick mine up. If you want, I'll pick yours up because I go by your house. I know that sometimes over the weekend, it's easier to look at these,
Right.
and especially for somebody that's still working. You know, weekends might be your only free time or whatever. So I don't know.
Otherwise, normally I would just have to come during the open hours, correct?
Yeah, and that's through the front door.
For the front door, yes.
Right, and they were right where you said they'd be, it's just that you couldn't get in if you
Right.
weren't there at 4:30 or whenever it locks up. But if you have a problem or an issue with it, just either give me a call or whatever, or if I'm in there and I see yours there, I'll grab it for you if you want.
Thanks.
The public service officer used to deliver mine.
Well,
You don't do
they're
that
not here anymore.
Yeah, we don't, that was eliminated from the budget.
Okay.
Yeah,
Whatever, okay.
yeah. Yeah, it was kind of different having a squad car come up your driveway all the time.
Kind of nice sometimes.
Well, the neighbors start talking after a while. So I tell my wife to quit yelling. We won't have that problem. Anybody, we're going to item number 11, motion to adjourn. Anybody like to make that
I'll
motion?
make the motion to adjourn.
We have a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote from Frank.
Frank, yes.
Bethany, yes.
Ron, aye.
Lynn, aye.
Meeting's closed.